Welcome back to the Diablo III podcast. I am your host Flux. This is part 2 of episode 122. This is our big Diablo 3 Reaper of Souls demo at Blizzcon 2013 show. I am continuing my conversation on this one, talking with Neinball and Wolfpaq, both of whom, by the way, asked questions at Diablo 3 panels and were on film, camera, microphone doing so. So if you recognize their voices, you can go look at the panels. Neinball asked one after the Reaper of Souls panel on Friday, and Wolfpaq was one of the questioners at the Diablo 3 open Q&A on Saturday, and they have pretty distinctive voices, so if you wonder what they look like, you can probably go look and find out, and I can tell you, but that would be cheating. I did not, but I posted a picture of myself with the interview I did with the two developers, which was podcast number 121, and you can certainly find that without too much trouble on DiabloInkGamers.com. Anyway, this is the second half of the show we recorded, split it up purely for length requirements. They're both about 15 minutes long this way. Part 1 was 122. We talked about the Crusader and the Reaper of Souls demo, adventure mode, general BlizzCon stuff, and some happy chat. This one covers more of Act 5 and Westmarch, the new act. We talk about Nephalem Rifts again because we can't help ourselves because they were awesome. A lot of stuff about Blizzard developer interactions and our thoughts for Reaper of Souls release, what we're going to do first, and more. So listen on and enjoy, and we will be back with another new podcast later next week. Bye-bye. Go ahead. So let's jump to Act 5 and Westmarch. We hadn't seen it before. We've seen videos, but what did you guys think? Was it sufficiently gothic?
Yeah, it had a very, very dark feel to it, not just aesthetically from the visuals that you had. I like that they did put some little touches in, because I came across one of the side quests in the area where you weren't fighting against, the undead or the agents of Malthael or anything like that. It was actually just a bunch of bandits that decided to take the opportunity to start killing the guardsmen and such because
to overthrow the king.
Yeah, they wanted to try and overthrow the king, who, from, I guess, is it spoilers to say story that they alluded to in the character dialogue?
You said the word story, and all the listeners' ears just glazed over, and they never heard the next 10 words. So it doesn't really matter what you can say now.
All right, yeah, because from one of the things
Go
that
right
from some of the stuff that they said is that the king of Westmarch is dead. So I don't know why they actually really cared about wanting to overthrow the king when he has passed away.
And you would find letters about, you kind of got a sense of what the story was going to be, but how much campaign mode did you even play, Wolfpaq? Did you do like one game of that and then just go to adventure mode?
Literally one game, and I just plowed. I was in such find the legendaries mode that I plowed through most of it, ignoring it. And then when you finished, the demo was over, and I was like, well, I could do that again more thoroughly, or I could go play adventure mode. And I was back playing adventure mode. I think it's
How much campaign for you, Neinball?
I played through it, I think 2 or 3 times. I played through it twice on the PC and then once on the PS4.
Bonus points. Yeah, I did it once, and then it was like, hey, adventure mode time. But then finally, I made myself go back on Saturday and played it like 3 times in a row with different characters, just to get a better sense of what the layout of the level and the new monsters and stuff. Because you would occasionally see those in the Nephalem Rifts, but I was more curious to get a more concentrated dose.
Yeah,
because glowing blue skeletons are really, really different than non-glowing blue skeletons.
Oh, of course, and it's on the PS4 version. It was only the campaign mode. It didn't have adventure mode activated.
Good, they don't deserve it.
Can I talk about Nephalem Glory? It doesn't really fit into adventure mode or story mode, but it's something that has never been enabled on the PC before. I found out recently. I had no idea. I've never played it on the console, but apparently these are yellow orbs that drop right next, a little bit bigger and yellower than health orbs, that just drop when you're done killing a big group of monsters. And when you step on it, it's a stacking buff that lasts for 1 minute plus 5 seconds for every health orb you pick up, and it stacks up to 3 times, and it gives you this well, the first thing it does at level 1 is give you this bright yellow chain effect that sometimes procs on your attacks that supposedly does damage. Like you said, Flux, nothing was enabled, so I couldn't tell how much damage it was doing, but it looked really cool. And then
let me point out before you go further that they have different effects in Nephalem Rifts versus in normal games.
Oh,
They do different stuff in Nephalem Rifts. They do cooler stuff in Nephalem Rifts. In campaign mode, they just give you like a speed up and a damage buff.
Yeah,
And but
well, I think
but as you
it's also
as
when in the normal mode, I believe in the campaign, it said something along the lines that you pulse AoE around you.
Yeah, I never got them stacked up enough because there wasn't enough monster density. But as Wolfpaq has mentioned, he played mostly adventure mode, and he was telling us how exciting they are in that.
yeah. Well, I guess it must have been in a Rift then when I got them stacking up because when I got to 3 stacks, the screen was just. I mean, I also had, Thunder Fury as my weapon and the whole vortex thing going on, but then like half my attacks were proccing this bright yellow explosion, and half the time I got a
Mm.
hit, I was exploding. My character was glowing bright yellow. There were these bright yellow chains like flashing across the screen all the time. It was really nuts. I had no idea what was going on, but I really liked it. And yeah, so Nephilim Glory, really cool. I'm glad So is it really only in the rifts that we're gonna get all that cool stuff happening? Because that makes me a little bit less excited.
No, it did have some special effects. I don't think I ever got it to 3 stacks while playing the campaign mode. The orbs were a lot rarer while playing in the campaign, but I do remember at one of the points, like the special ability that it was granting me was like a pulsing AOE that was just ticking for damage on the mobs. I want to say maybe. I didn't see the numbers, but I had the monster health bars turned on, and it was ticking for a decent amount, like a tenth of their health every time that it went on, every second or two.
Nice. And the yellow chain could proc legendary effects as well, which was just crazy. Especially because so many new legendaries have so many new effects that are gonna affect your gameplay. One that I didn't mention yet was a shield that I found that made it so when you block, it freezes the enemy, which is kind of outrageous given the ridiculously high block rate people have, theorized that you're going to be able to get on the Crusader. So I think there is a lot of potential for melee Crusader. Given the really small kit they gave us in this demo, you couldn't really do it.
Well, you could do it. It was just not as efficient or as fast,
Yes,
obviously. So
yes.
you only have 20 minutes to play, and you're overpowered. You're not going to fart around with blocking a lot.
Yeah, that's true.
I mean, he had a couple of defensive skills. Shield glare. It's like, no, I'm not using that.
No way.
No.
I mean, you charge in one direction, and you blind things, and they stand there for a minute. It's like, how about I just destroy you in 1 second instead of this?
Especially because the shield glare, that was your option versus the steed. So it's either
No, that's a different skill.
oh, that
It
was.
was shield glare or consecration, which was that area of protection which was never needed.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, steed charge was condemn was the other one, and that was the one where it was basically the wizard's energy, whatever, where you'd build up for 3 seconds and then
Oh,
explode.
except you
Oh,
were
and
sucking
it
monsters
taunted.
in.
Yeah, you would taunt all the monsters towards you, which it is um, something that shouldn't be new, like a new concept to anyone that's played any type of MMO, the taunting, but it is considered like a new form of CC.
Wasn't the
And
Did the barbarian? I know that before the game was released, the barbarian was going to have a taunt in one of his shouts. Did that get taken out?
No, I think the taunting shout is still there.
Oh, it is. Okay.
just no one's ever used it because they have Into the Fray.
Because
Yeah.
why?
Because why? Exactly. Because Whirlwind. That's why.
Yeah.
So on the whole, I think Westmarch was pretty cool. I think if we'd only had that to play, only had the campaign mode, it wouldn't have been as much fun overall, but we would have been more appreciative of the story and exploring it and stuff. But with adventure mode, it was like, why? Kind of like the Barbarian's taunt skill.
Yeah.
When you look at the alternative, it's like no one's ever going to do this. But I mean, I enjoyed it. It was kind of interesting. You'd start off in the same, little default area. It kind of reminded me of running into, God, what's the town in the desert in Act 2? I'm totally blanking. Where you're running over a little bridge and there's tons of bodies and there's like survivors and stuff. It was a little reminiscent of that. But of course, it was much darker and more gothic, so that made it much more efficient, officially Diablo-esque.
Oh,
And then you'd kill wraiths that were flying around and stuff like that. And then you went. It was weird. You had to go kill the first death maiden in this church that was all full of dead bodies, and we've seen a lot of screenshots of that. And then that became the town. I thought that was kind of an interesting thing. Where like once you cleared out this first area, that became
Yeah.
where all the wagons were and stuff.
Yeah, that was cool.
And then you go to the next area, and it was like this one gigantic area. Like almost all of Act 5 in this demo was just one huge area, and only once you got to the end of it, you end up a thing called Gideon's Vault or Gideon's Row or something like that.
Gideon's Row, yes.
Yeah, that was the final area. That was like a small area for the boss. But I did the campaign mode, like I said, 4 or 5 times, and it was huge, and I saw way different stuff every game. I mean,
Hmm.
I saw a few of the same subquests and little dungeons and stuff, but there were a number of them that I only saw once in the 4 games, and I never did get more than like half the map explored. Or you can't. I guess I don't know how much I got explored if it wasn't all explored, right? But I would keep going. There would be big dead ends in every direction. The map would just end. I hadn't actually explored it all yet, and I'd be almost out of time. And so it was a really large area, and the randomization. People are, there's one of the things in the panel was how much more randomization they're getting in Act 5. And they did a whole thing in the panel showing slides of the maps that you'll see in the Pandemonium Fortress, which, as we covered last time, Neinball has already seen in WoW. Yes, the Panda Fortress, of course.
Yes. Oh, yeah, that.
But the Panda Fortress in D3 is a little bit different. But yeah, so I don't know if you guys played enough. Obviously, Wolfpaq didn't play enough of Act 5 to see if there was a difference in the spawning.
No.
She only saw it once, but it does seem like I have hope that we'll get some. Oh, and we should mention that adventure mode you couldn't go into Act 5 because it's not done yet or they don't want to show it to us yet.
Mm-hmm.
But
So
you could get Act 5 in the Rift.
Yeah, but they were kind of smaller, dungeony things. I mean, at least the ones I saw.
Well,
Maybe you got a bigger one or a different one.
yeah, no, I mean that's true for environments, but for the monsters, like in the very beginning presentation they talked a little bit about a monster in the marsh called a boggart.
Yeah.
And I found him and his whole ecosystem in the Rift with the whole.
His whole
Yeah,
ecosystem.
it was pretty crazy. It was really neat hearing the devs talk about their design process with that, and then getting to play against it. That was really cool. Like with the bats swooping in, picking up the little boggarts, turning them into giant boggarts, which spawn more little like this whole endless cycle with someone in the audience yelling out, "Why would you do that to us?" Like, um, I thought it was great.
Yeah, you got the. So we should mention Rift bosses, the Rift Guardian. So the whole point in the Nephalem Rifts is that you're killing monsters. You have a little percentage completion thing on the right, and it's ticking up towards 100%. And every time you kill a monster, it's a third of a percent or whatever it is,
Yeah.
right? And once you get to 100%, you get a Rift boss that immediately appears. And I got 3 of those, and they were all Death Maiden, basically. They were all a new Act 5 Angel boss. Did you guys get anything different than that, or was
I
I?
had a Mallet Lord as one of my Rift bosses, and he had some very interesting abilities. It wasn't like the things that you get on the normal affixes that you'd find on elites. Like he was actually like shooting me with like he would drop. It wasn't really fire. It was the same animation as the little orb that would shoot down from the Nephilim power. It would just like shoot like this little tiny explosion would just drop down on top of you, and it would alternate between fire and ice, constantly just dropping down on me every time that I was in line of sight of them.
Well, that would help your sore muscles at least.
There you go. Yeah, icy hot.
So you did 15 Nephalem Rifts pack. What kind of Rift Guardians did you find?
I saw a lot of them seem to be those angels that would that you were talking about, the Act 5 ones. Although I did also see a Mallet Lord boss, and I had one of those guys from Act 2 that was spinning around. Um, that guy was annoying because he would just get on top of me and try to spin. Although they all died so fast to Heaven's Fury that I didn't really get a chance to see and analyze their skills all that much.
Good
I know,
going,
I'm sorry
dude.
about that.
Some investigator you are.
It's all about the power gaming.
Did you? Yeah. My best Nephalem Rift one was one of the early ones I did with the Demon Hunter, and I forget what the first level was, but the second level I got one of the area crater levels, the really big, open space
Mhm.
ones, and it was ginormous, and I never finished it. I got to 98% when I ran out of time on that game. I was very unhappy about that. But I just couldn't find the legendary upgrades, and I didn't go harvest them in the advance like certain exploiters at BlizzCon. And I kept running, and I kept getting these huge dead ends, and I would have to run back like 50 screens. I mean, you've seen those
Yeah.
maps, there's really big dead
Yeah.
ends, and there was just never an exit. And I'm like, why aren't there more monsters here? They were like big ones when they were all spaced apart.
Was it only a 2-level map?
I damned if I know,
Okay,
dude.
yeah,
I
because
never found the exit.
that's one of the ones that it's.
I think it probably was because I was at 98 or 99%, and it was, it's got the timeout, and I was running down some long empty hallway. I was like, no, because once it would say no more time, you'd have like 20 more seconds for the machine to
Yeah,
turn off.
because
And I was just really curious to see if I could actually get the Rift boss to appear, even if I didn't have time to kill him. But I did not. I was running and
Yeah, because
running.
that was one of the ones that I had. It was only like I think it was a 3-level map, and I got to the end, and I was only like 85 because I didn't explore all the wings on the ones before it. So it was, I would have to re-enter I'd have to like leave and re-enter the rift in order to get to the first levels to try and find the things that I missed to spawn the boss.
Yeah, so probably in the real game we'll be doing those a little more slowly and methodically, just in
Definitely.
case. But and some of the other ones I got were like ones like Wolfpaq said, where you would just go down 4 levels and you just take the stairs as soon as you found it, and you get like 20 or 25% per level, and it was just inevitable. You couldn't
Yeah.
help but get it, and you get it in 10 minutes. And some of them you just run and run your little ass off. I got one. The first level was the Fields of Misery,
Nice.
and I thought that would be. I'm like maybe this will be a one level one. But then I was halfway through it, and I was, Neinball was playing next to me on these machines at this point. I'm like, this is like the pre-Inferno monster density buffing patch version of Fields of Mystery, because I ain't finding a damn thing. You're like 2 screens and you find one tree, and it's like, oh god, this sucks. So yeah, obviously monster density varies a lot. And some of the early ones I did, it seemed like I was getting a boss like every other screen, and I was assuming that was the way they always were. And I did later ones, and I'd get one boss on a whole level. So they really do vary a lot, as Wolfpack said earlier. The monster density is really high sometimes. So, any last thoughts on the demo? We've kind of beaten that horse to death before we go on to some of the random stuff at the show.
I guess just to go through and note that the Act 5 looks like very well polished. You're going back and forth between the bounty mode and playing the story campaign. The little animations of when you break wagons and the boxes and such, it looks really sharp. And just the game itself overall, it almost looks as if they did a slight engine upgrade because I run everything on max settings on my computer at home, and the ones yeah.
Ooh,
Ooh.
we're dealing with a
Yeah,
badass
the
here.
computers that were there at Blizzcon were a better machine than mine, but the settings I imagine would be exactly the same. And I noticed the animations and everything was a little bit sharper, a little bit clearer.
Did you take one home at the end of the
I
show when
tried
it
to,
said
but
just
they
grab your own
stopped
machine?
me. And
Yeah, I hate that.
then the only other thing would be the PlayStation 4. Is that was like the first time that I actually got to sit down and play the console version of the game, and it felt really fluid. It took, I want to say, like a minute or two just to learn the controls, and then you just kind of started going with it. I really fell in love with the quick swap for the gear when it would drop on the ground. How you could just hit up and down on the touchpad in order to find the piece of gear that you wanted.
Any last thoughts on the console or the other thing, Wolfpack?
I thought it was pretty cool that it seems like we're going to be able to level in adventure mode. Um,
Yeah, very
Yeah,
quickly.
like without having to skip cutscenes and stuff. If you just want to sit down and kill some monsters, you can, and you don't have to be max level. I mean, I know the emphasis is this is end game, but you don't have to be in the end game to do it, and I
yeah,
really appreciate that.
yeah. That it definitely is. Well, it's that itself will bring about in game, but the adventure mode isn't entirely designed around being the in game because, well, I guess a little bit of a segue. When I started talking with Alex Mayberry, the lead producer over there, he said that adventure mode unlocks when you beat the game, but then he was like, we might even take that out. So you might even be able to
I
just.
was told you could do it at like level 20 or 15. You could do it whenever you
Oh,
wanted.
okay, yeah,
Another dev told me
yeah,
that.
he had said that you had to beat the game at least once in order to unlock it, but he did say that they were, thinking about taking that out, and just allowing you to start in adventure mode.
Well, obviously our characters in this demo hadn't beaten the game yet, not at level 32, but that's special,
Hmm.
33. What level did you guys get to? 34, 35 usually? In your 20
Yeah,
minutes?
Yeah, when I was playing adventure mode, easily 35 almost every playthrough. Like just even doing bounties or the Nephalem Rifts, not even trying to put any real effort into it, and using like the cool skill cooldown or the life gem in the helmet.
Yeah, I mentioned this in a forum post earlier, but I got to 36 in two of the games, and when I was really skimming for bounties. So I haven't, gone to compare to Diablo 3, but I mean, picture a brand new level 33 character with crappy gear. You've got I did not have a ruby in my hat. I had no EXP gear. I had no follower. It's on MP0 or the equivalent thereof. You're not in a multiplayer game for bonuses, and you go up 3 levels just from killing bounties in 15 minutes. I don't think you can do that in Diablo 3 at the moment. Obviously, if you had really good gear on, you could level that fast, or you're on MP10 or something. But
Hmm.
but yeah, it was really fast. The bounties are crazy. I
yeah,
mean, it was like what was it, like 20K gold and like 50K experience for like 2 minutes of
yeah.
work, and less than that sometimes. You go to GOM in 10
Well,
seconds.
I'm glad that I hope that, because one of the concerns I have is, regarding gems, how are they going to keep a 14 or now I guess 15 gem slot or gem levels with only dropping level 5 or no 8, but you
There are changes coming,
Yeah.
yeah,
James.
yeah, so
I was told in my interview they got new tiers planned and new things planned. They wouldn't tell me
Oh, good.
details though, bastards.
Well, good that changes are coming because I was really concerned. I also, I mean, I don't know if this is demo related. I was disappointed that they weren't ready to talk about ladders.
And barely guilds. I asked a bunch of guild questions in my interview, which I really need to finish transcribing and post tonight. But they were just like, well, we want to kind of do this and kind of do this, and I think they've committed to doing them, but they haven't really worked on the details yet.
So maybe a bit before we get to play this.
Well, it's like 2 years till release date still,
Oh,
so
true.
there's no hurry. Oh wait, there's 2 months to release date according to some people. Were you guys hoping for a beta announcement at BlizzCon? I
I,
mean, I think Xanth had actually predicted that, so that's why he's good to go.
yeah, I wasn't expecting it. I even though there was the offhanded comment from Josh during the what is it, the We Play Games, or the one Chinese fan site interview, saying that they would potentially hope to have a beta out by the end of this year. I wasn't really expecting it.
Well, they got 7 months yet, so 7 weeks
Hmm.
yet.
Yeah,
I'm not sure how many months your year has, but mine only has 7 weeks left.
yeah.
So, moving on to a little bit of general BlizzCon stuff. Any interesting social activities? Obviously, you had a bunch of those 9 balls, so let's let Wolfpaq go first. Any Jay Wilson sightings? Any interesting people? Did you kick Mike Morhaime in the nuts?
No, I didn't do that. I had a really random experience after Saturday night, though. I went with some friends to a ramen place in Fountain Valley called Shinsengumi, and I'm sitting there with
Nice plug, by the way.
with my. You can edit it out. I don't really care.
Can you get the Yelp
Yeah,
page
hold
for
on
that
one
and the
sec.
links
Let me
here?
Google it.
If that was Shinsengumi
And
there, and
it's a
it's a
ramen
ramen
place in Fountain
place.
Valley, and we were eating and we're animatedly talking about the show, what we liked, what we didn't like, and I'm really bad at remembering the names of the skills and quests in game. I can't even begin to remember the names of the Blizzard employees, but like I'm halfway through this diatribe on Diablo, and the chick sitting next to us like taps me on the arm, and she was like, "Oh, did you go to BlizzCon?" Like random chick, I've never seen her before. I was like, "Yeah, I was there. It was a lot of fun." And then she points across the table, and I see this face. I'm like, "This guy is super familiar, but I don't know what from." And then he introduced himself. He was Joe Shelley, the you know lead or senior game designer who was spent all that time telling me about boggets that I got to kill, and so um, I was just like, oh, well, you've been listening to us like rant for like 15 minutes. That's cool. Like, I don't know. I mean, we didn't, he didn't get to talk for long. They were on the way out, and he's a pretty shy guy, but he was really nice, and he was just, he explained some stuff to us, which I've forgotten because I was sort of struck at having, I mean, here I am like 20 miles away from BlizzCon well after it ended. Like, it was like 11 p.m. Saturday night, but yeah, that was just, it's a small world.
You were
So
destined.
when you followed him home and broke into his house, what did you discover?
Uh, 5 computers lined up.
And now they're yours. You are
Yep.
precious. So did you hang around the CM booth and talk to any of the blues or anything, or you just
No,
came and went?
I did ask a question at the Q&A. I was curious about how they're going to separate, how they're going to devalue crit, because in addition to the whole trifecta boosting your damage thing, crit is tied to all of the class resources. Everyone has a skill or a trait that lets crit give them the resources faster, which obviously means they can use their skills faster. And I mean, they just got done talking about how they want to move away from trifecta, but I didn't understand how they were going to do that. But then, I mean, their answer was they're not gonna try to do it. They're just gonna try to make the other stats on gear be more valuable. So, um,
And they're taking out a lot of those, critical mass has been totally changed and
right,
nerfed and
right. But I
stuff.
mean, not
So
only just that, like the arcane power on crit is like a steadfast mod for wizards on all of
Well,
their class specific gear.
and yeah, it
used to
used to
be.
be. That's
Oh,
getting
it's not.
gutted.
Is it gone?
And
Oh,
not gone. It's just can no longer roll on weapons.
oh, okay. But I mean, so sources and
There's some wizard player out there who hasn't read any data mining, just currently
Yeah.
screaming, "No!"
okay. I wasn't.
But hey, you can cast 2 hydras
Yeah,
now, so
yeah,
don't
all
worry.
good. Oh man, oh,
More
that
than a
was
fair
something else I
trade-off.
did want to mention. I did try the wizard out for a bit, and the Hydra buff is awesome. Like it, obviously not Heaven's Fury awesome, but my I picked the Lightning Hydra rune, and it was doing substantial damage to elites, way more than I've ever seen Hydra do in the live game. And I got to try the Glacial Spike rune too, which was
Yeah, that was
which
a
is pretty
default.
cool.
Did you hack that machine to see what the percentage was, or you didn't
I
find out?
You mean you just hold control? You can do it in the game now.
So you hacked that one.
No,
Did you see what the
I
numbers were
didn't
though?
jot those
No.
down. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I tried a little wizard. It seemed like the default build was really weak. It was all
Yeah,
cold
I
stuff for
changed out
some
of it
reason.
immediately.
Like it was a theme. Yeah, I tried it for like a minute. I'm like, okay, I've got Glacial Spike and Ray of Frost and Blizzard and whatever the ice armor. I'm
Yeah.
like, okay, this sucks. So why don't you tell us your dev stalking stories, Neinball?
Let's see. Where do I begin? Okay.
Whose body is currently tied up in your crawl space?
Oh, I can't give that. I can't get that information. They'll find me too quickly. Um, but let's see. I think one of the first things that I did is, of course, I went to the opening ceremony, and then I went to the cinematics panel, and from there I then started just hanging out at the Blizzard booth, and I think it was a bunch of WoW guys that were there, none of the Diablo developers. But I went over and started chatting with some of the CMs because Lilira and Nevelistus kind of ran the whole thing the entire time. So it was like the Blizzard CM crew was there 24/7. And after I chatted with them for a little bit, I decided to go through and catch some other stuff, and I ran into Alex Mayberry, who is the lead producer for Reaper of Souls, and I just chatted with him a little bit, seeing just what I could learn, just ask him some questions about like what is it like balancing the production times between the console and the PC. And they were really proud of the fact that they're the first team on Blizzard in so many years to actually be building a console version or a console title. That they kind of wear it as like a badge of pride around the development staff there. And then he just asked me, "Have you had a chance to play the demo yet?" And since I had just finished some panels, I said no. And so he's like, "Well, would you like to? I'll let you skip the line." And so he just went through and he walked me over to the demo area, and I got to skip the line. And he even said, to one of the people managing it, once he's done playing the story mode, let him play the adventure mode as well. So I basically got to play twice without actually having to go through the line itself. And the surprising thing is that after I was done playing, he was still standing outside the demo area, waiting to come and chat with me after I was done to see what my impressions were like of the game afterwards and discuss. We talked about the items and some of the things that we found, and the philosophy behind the items, and talked a little bit about why they want to get rid of the auction house and such. So that was really cool. And then later on in the day, I think it was Don Vu, the associate game designer, who's in charge of not in charge. He's not the actual class developer for the monk or the wizard, but he takes a special liking to the monk and the wizard. And because I made a monk, I was able to go through and talk with him and get a little bit of the insight into how the designers actually go through to try and balance the classes. Everyone, of course, has their favorite classes, and everyone tries to make their class overpowered. And then it kind of goes into group discussions, and they say like that's too much. And so it has to go back and they redesign it and nerf some of the skills and such. And he was talking about one of the new wizard skills that wasn't in the demo, but is one of the things that was data mined, Black Hole. And just that week, he was messing around with one of the rune effects for Black Hole, where it would actually take away all of the environmental affixes that the elites put up. So every time that you would cast it, it would suck in all of the plague orbs. It would suck in the molten trails. It would suck in the arcane. The arcane. I didn't ask him about the walls, but it basically would clear the board every time that you would cast it. And although that effect was universally liked across the dev team, it just felt like it was too much because it had a very short cooldown, and you could pretty much negate almost every single monster's affix in the game. Um, so it was just really interesting to hear some of the structure behind the balancing for the classes that the developers will go through and do. And from there, I also chatted with Kevin Martins, one of the lead designers, and Brian Kindergan, the lead writer. Talked with lore with them for a little bit. I won't bore people too much with the details into that. But one of the interesting things that they kind of like foreshadowed when I was going and talking with them was The soul stone, the black soul stone itself, kind of gives an aura that nothing's leaking out of it, but it just corrupts everything around it. And it's that corrupting capability is why the Haradrim were carrying it on the pikes, because they couldn't touch it. If they did, it would, kind of warp them and corrupt them.
Just like
And
the Ark of the Covenant.
Yes, exactly. And of
Yeah.
course, what does Malthael do at the end of the cinematic?
Go up for
Exactly,
tacos.
but he, in addition to that, he touches the Black Soul Stone. So they of course wouldn't elaborate anything, past that. They're just kind of giving a little bit of.
Yeah, he was a nice
Yeah,
guy
he
until
was,
then.
Charmer.
Except for cutting everyone's head off. Yeah, he was really, yeah. Now I'm being a real asshole
Now
now.
we're getting into levels of super douche with Malthael, but so that was an interesting conversation that I had with some of those guys, and then of course. Wyatt Cheng hung out for hours at the community booth Saturday evening, and it literally became story time. There was I think at first there was 5 people, and by the end there was 15, 20 that were just standing around chatting with him, listening to him talk, asking questions, and he was answering almost every single question to the best of his abilities.
And not in crafty, elusive fashion
Yeah.
either, but with real words. Yeah, we were texting trying to get together for a thing that night. We were going to go over to Exile's house party. Then it started too late, and I just got into the ROS machines at I don't know 5 o'clock or something that afternoon after my interview, not long after. And you said, "Hey, I'm talking to Wyatt at the community booth," and I'm like, "Stall him. I'll be over there or something." Of course, he was going nowhere. But he was talking to some fans. They weren't fan site people. They were just hanging out chatting, and I was kind of standing behind them and talking to you and making obnoxious comments and stuff. And Wyatt was kind of glancing at me every now and then. Eventually looks over. What did he say? It's you can ask me a question, Flux, as long as
Yeah, it
it's
has
really
to be
sarcastic.
incredibly sarcastic, or it has to be dripping with cynicism, or it had to be snarky or something like that.
Yeah. So I talked to him earlier. I talked to him up in the press room, and he'd mentioned that he listens to the podcast. He hadn't heard the last couple episodes, but he listens all the time, and I guess that proves it.
Yeah.
He proved that he watches the podcast. If you know that Flux is known for obnoxious sarcasm, then you're obviously a podcast listener. You ever noticed that? Have you, Wolfpaq? I don't do that much sarcasm on the show.
No.
Not at all. We don't have that here.
We don't tolerate that.
None of that sort of shenanigans. The funny thing, so the press room, I mentioned the description of it earlier, but they have a buffet in the back where they have convention center workers. There's always waters and sodas and stuff sitting out, and power, granola bars and stuff like that. But then twice a day they bring out they bang a big bell first, and all the press runs back there because we're greedy pigs. Okay, they don't actually do that, but and they bring out a buffet, like at a wedding kind of thing, serve yourself thing, and we've got teriyaki chicken, and there's a meat dish and a couple of vegetable dishes and mashed potatoes or whatever. I mean, it's not it's not gourmet food or, but I mean it's free and it's there. You just kind of go and shovel some down your throat and go back to staring at the hot Korean reporters for StarCraft. I mean, typing reports for your article. That was the one drawback about no StarCraft this year. A real shortage of cute Asian girls in the whatever that room is where the people talk about things. Maybe next year.
Or I mean, WCS
anyway,
was nonstop, so they probably were down there the entire time.
Yeah, no one cares about that. I'd like the finals though. Did the Korean guy or the Korean guy win? I wasn't sure who was going to pull that one out.
I think it was the Korean guy.
Yeah. Yeah, as soon as it starts, I'm like, well, Korea's going to win this one.
Did you listen to the interview?
And I tried not to. It was on the TV though. There was no avoiding it, frankly. Yeah. That was funny. I couldn't actually. I wasn't sitting near where I could see a TV, and I wasn't looking anyway. But the whole thing was the audio was in the press room, and they kept saying, their names weren't obviously of any ethnicity. It was what was it?
Yeah,
LOL or
SOS
something like that.
SOS and Jaedong, though Jaedong is his actual name.
And well, lucky he must have parents who really love him. So I couldn't see it and couldn't hear them talking, and they found the SOS or whoever won, right? It was 4-1. It was a big upset, and they kept saying he was going to come back. They're pretty quick games from what I could hear.
Sadly.
And then they get to the final announcer, and he's like, "So, how exciting are this? It's the greatest thing." And then you hear this guy, the translator starts talking. I'm like, "Oh, what a surprise! It was a Korean guy." I couldn't see it, but I kind of knew it was going to come. But obviously they're the master race when it comes to space simulations. So, as I pointed out in text to a few people, the Ender's Game movie just came out, right? They should have obviously had a Korean in the lead. I mean, that wasn't the way it was in the book, but if you're talking about space warfare simulations to save the human race, I'm pretty sure you want some guy who lives in Seoul to do it. You don't want some white kid from Montana. I'm sorry, but no, we're all gonna die, and the bugs will kill us, exterminate us all. So anyway, this 80-minute segue aside, all of the Blizzard people, the developers, go up to the press room B because that's where the food is. So whatever the lunch or the dinner, they all come, shuffling in after their panels or whatever. And plus, they're always up there doing interviews in these little conference rooms all around the area there. And they go up and grab some food and snacks, and they get, they grab dinner and stuff. And it is so. Whenever a Diablo 3 panel ends, like 5 minutes later, Wyatt walks in and Josh walks in, and every other person who's working on the game sort of comes in a parade. It's like, I'm just like brimming with, I want to sideswipe them
Stop
at the
eating.
mashed potato bar and say, hey, question. So the funny thing was Thursday night. I mean, Friday night, I had this thing when I was talking. I talked to Rankhill and Neinball and Exile, and I couldn't. Didn't manage to go with you with Wolfpaq, unfortunately. But I was going down to meet them there, and that was right after like the Diablo 3 one of the panels ended. And so I was sitting there getting a bite to eat before I went down to this interview, and I'm sitting at a table, and Kevin Martins walks up and sits down and goes, "Oh, hey Flux, how's it going?" And he's eating his mashed potatoes or whatever, and he had mentioned a funny side effect. I had my interview was originally scheduled for like
Hmm.
12:30 on Saturday, and I forget who it was with. It was like with like a story guy and some other dude. And and they had changed that right before the show and rescheduled to like 3 hours later with Travis Day and Jason Regnier, who are more of the tech guys. And I didn't know why that had happened. I was happy with it. I didn't really care one way or the other, right? And Kevin sat down and said, "Yeah, did you get your new interview scheduled?" Because I looked over the panel and thought you'd be better off with these guys. I'm like, "Oh, that was cool." So he actually looks over all the interviews they have scheduled and says, who is who and who is where and
Hmm.
what will they want to talk to. And obviously, if it was Neinball, they'd give you the story guy, and you just sit there and kiss each other for 20 minutes
Ooh.
and not even talk. But 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 with me, they gave me the tech guys, so I thought that was nice of them to actually
Hmm.
that attention to detail. But I'm talking to him and just finishing up what I was eating and have my bag all packed and ready to go downstairs. And then Wyatt walks over and sits down. And then two other guys walk over and sit down. And I see Josh in the buffet line, and I'm like, well, God damn it! I'm supposed to be meeting someone downstairs to do a podcast in 5 minutes, and I'm sitting here with the entire brain trust of the game. It's like this would be a really good time to ask some
Hmm.
questions, but you don't want to hijack them with too many deep dev questions when they're just trying to get a bite to eat. But it was an ironic thing. But yeah, it's kind of cool in the press room. You're just sort of there, and these guys are walking through all day, and you can get a few quick chats and questions in here and there, and ideally in really sarcastic tones of voice because I hear they
That's
like
what
it
I
like
hear.
that.
That's what I hear. They
That's
actually
what.
requested it.
Yeah, they insist on it
Yeah, apparently so. I didn't actually ask him a sarcastic question either.
for
Probably
shame.
only got one question in.
I
He didn't even know the answer.
remember that
Oddly.
was about the shrines, right?
Yeah, I said, how many of those? Yeah, I said, how many of those new red shrines are in the demo? And Wyatt's like, I don't know. He's like, I work on skills, man. I have no idea what's in this damn game. That's some other guy doing that, and he just plays. They don't know what's in the latest beta build. So the moral of the story, obviously, is that Wolfpack has failed us completely
Yep,
on
pretty
talking to
much.
devs.
That.
And next year you have to hunt down Wyatt
I'll
Cheng
try.
and adopt him or something.
Hmm. I mean,
And if people go to BlizzCon, just go by the blue booth, and there's always I saw Hearthstone and WoW developers there all the time too,
yeah.
just kind of sitting around. So they're
Hey,
happy to
I
chat.
did
That's
talk
what
to
they're
the
for.
winner of our Twitter contest, who was very happy to be there and
Oh,
very
cool.
grateful. I
How'd
think
that?
his name was Luke. I'm concerned about item binding.
So
Oh,
tell people
so
what
I
it
mean,
is if
they
they haven't been
mentioned in one
following.
of the panels that every single one of the top tier items or legendaries and set items is going to be account bound when it drops, and theoretic.
Even worse,
Oh,
every
not just the
legendary,
top
not just the
ones.
top ones.
Yep.
Yeah, that's in the interview I posted today. An excerpt from my interview. Every single legendary. So anyway, go
So,
ahead.
anyways, I don't know. I've never liked item binding in Diablo because it just I don't, it seems like I mean it's probably good for the economy, but if I find a great item and my wife or my friends could use it and they're not there and I can't give it to them, it just sort of destroys the fun of the item game for me. And I know that it makes it tougher on botters, but I don't think we should. I mean, it doesn't. Let me rephrase. It doesn't destroy the fun of the item. It's still really cool. Hey, I found a really cool item. Maybe I can use it. But it's also really fun to find items and give them away to your friends or just even. I remember Diablo 2 games when I would be starting up for the first time, and there'd be games where people who had been playing forever just ran around dropping a bunch of crap they didn't need.
Oh, here,
But
have this full
yeah,
Arctic furs set.
yeah, right, exactly. Something that is not going to totally destroy the game, but anyways, it's just that's not going to be able to happen anymore. So it's a little frustrating for me because and trading too, being able to trade your way up in Diablo 2 is really fun, and they're finally getting rid of the auction house, which I don't quite agree with either, but yeah, I can see why they're doing it, and it'll be great when drop rates go way up to compensate for it. But at the same time, there's still trade. There's still trade channels, trade forums. They could come up with something else to put in the game to compensate for the loss of the auction house. But if legendaries and set items become account bound, then I don't see why they'd bother, because I mean, this game really isn't about rares. There may be one or two slots that you have rares, but you're not going to be like trying to eagerly trade your way up to them. So
And enchanting
right,
makes them
Yep.
account bound as
even
well.
putting
So
a gem in a slot made the item account bound, or at least a rare account bound in the demo.
once you take out the gem, you
Oh,
can
can
trade it
you?
though.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah, you just couldn't do that. There was no jeweler in the demo, but
Oh,
yeah,
good.
I got that clarified. So it's only while it's got a gem in it, which is sort of kind of a pointless thing. However, what they said in the interview is that there are account-bound gems. So I think Marquee or maybe the higher
Yeah,
levels are
well,
going to be
Marquee
account-bound.
is already account bound.
Yeah, so maybe they're going to be more of them. But anyway, that's what they pointed out, that unless it's an account-bound gem, in which case they're both account-bound forever. Then apparently, but
Yeah.
sorrow. And as you just said, Wolfpack, they had this whole closing the auction house thing, and everyone's like, oh, everyone was blaming the auction house for problems that were more of the itemization system
Yep.
than the auction house, I think. Like it just made them so easy to spread the items around. But of course now, if everything is going to be soul bound, or practically everything but rares, why do you need to close the auction house? I think it's kind of a PR thing at this point. Like people are blaming it, so
Yeah,
Oh,
they're going to just
definitely.
eliminate it.
Especially like the level that they brought up the fact that they were closing the auction house at almost every chance that they got. It definitely is a PR, because that's what, the community, I think, a little bit misguidedly is asking for, more so than anything else. But I mean, it's what the majority of the community is just screaming for. So in that respect, they're delivering on what the community wants.
And do people know what they want or what they need?
Not all the time. Is I guess it's just the whole thing with the item binding. It's like, because if they remove the auction house, then you have to address botting and third-party websites for doing trading and upping the amount that people are going to get hacked, because that's what they learned in World of Warcraft, that they went from more so from botting to actually hacking people to get more gold and items with which to sell to other players. And the only way it's something that would have to be addressed more so once the auction house itself is removed. And then at that point, it's like, well, what do? You kill trading, and so it's just, that's one of
yeah.
those, just like, what you're going to have to live with if you don't want an auction house, you don't want an actual Blizzard facilitated trade system. Then I mean, it's, to me, it does make sense. I don't agree with it, but to me it's logical. And yeah, it's like, you don't want the auction house, you're not going to get trading.
What do you think on the binding, Neinball? I mean, obviously Wolfpack said he wasn't a big fan of it.
Personally, I'm not really that big of a fan, for the same reasons that he is. I play with my friends a lot, so if they're not on, not being able to trade them these legendary items, especially once you start playing it a lot and you have these ones, well, I found, like, he was mentioning earlier, the Thunder Fury. Well, I found a Thunder Fury with a higher proc chance or more DPS or better stats, for going back and taking it to re-enchant. you know, Now all I have left with the old one is either give it to a follower or disenchant it. I can't give it to anybody anymore. So it definitely has some negative connotations to it for when you do play with friends a lot. Though it is nice that they at least gave you the capability of trading it to other people in your game if it dropped while they were there.
Yeah, that's the loophole. You can trade legendaries and sets if they're to people who are in the game when it drops, while you're in that game or shortly afterwards. But after
Hmm.
that, it's yours forever. And of course, the question is, what are you going to trade it for? If they, unless they, what are the odds they're going to find a legendary you want in that same game? I mean, pretty
Yeah.
low, right? So you're going to be selling it for gold or gems or whatever we're going to be
Yeah,
bartering for
which
at some point.
I guess would be the only final thing that I wanted to touch on, is that they did say that even though the legend that you are going to find more legendaries in the game, that they are going to have kind of different tiers of legendaries, and the more powerful that it is, or at least the more power that they attribute to it, the rarer it will become. And I'm sure that these numbers won't be indicative to the final game itself, but just using as an example, Wyatt was going and talking about, you'd have like certain legendaries that you would start finding at around, say, like 400 hours played, for its chance to drop times the number of monsters that you killed and whatever. And you know then you're going to have another set of legendaries that might start dropping at, like, say, 1,000 hours played that are going to be far more powerful than the other ones. So there's definitely going to be very rare items out there that will give you great incentive to put more time into the game that you'll strive for because they're just that powerful.
And you can't just go buy them in the auction house. So I'm not a huge. I like the idea of some binding personally, but I don't see why they had to close the auction house if they're going to bind everything worth trading in the first place, right? But obviously the trade-off is if you have an auction house that allows for such free movement of goods, then that's kind of what all the problems of the current itemization system, or a lot of them. And the benefit of not having binding is that you can make really, really cool items drop, because then you're not just going to have them going in the auction house and then everyone in the game has got one immediately. And that's kind of the whole thing with the current system of the trifectas and stuff. I mean, everyone in the game, it seems like, who has any kind of money has like awesome trifectas and quadfectas and quinfectas in all their gear slots, right? How many of those have you ever actually found yourself? I mean, even for your own use or to trade. I mean, I found a lot less than I'm using. I can tell you that much, right? So of course, that's kind of the problem with. That's the benefit of having binding, is you can make those items drop much more commonly, so you will actually be able to find really cool stuff, and it's more fun to find things than it is to buy them. At least that's what they're arguing anyway, right? So that's I mean, that's the whole argument for binding, is that they can make. I'm almost quoting exactly what one of the guys said in the interview I did. And he's like, "This is why we have binding, because then you can make really cool legendaries drop, and we can have all these legendaries with these amazing, awesome effects on them, like the ones Wolfpaq was hacking nonstop."
Yeah, no, I
And if you don't have binding, they can't have such awesome stuff dropping. And the only problem is you can't give it to your friends. But as you discovered in that Hearthstone panel on the announcements, people don't have friends that play Blizzard games.
That's why you have AI.
That's why you have an AI. So problem solved.
Not even having played the game, just listening to the developers, and some of the interviews that are coming out. Can't wait to hear yours, Flux, and just going back and catching up on the panels that I missed. There's, the developers have even more passion for the game now than they did prior to, Classic launching. So Reaper of Souls really looks like it's going to be the game that a lot of people were expecting, and it's.
So you enjoyed your 2.5-year beta test, then?
Exactly.
As the kids say in the Battle.net forums?
Thoroughly enjoyed my 2.5-year beta test and cannot wait to get the full version of the game. And this is just coming from someone that already enjoys playing the game. That this is. I'm sorry.
That's not allowed.
I'm going against all the norms right now.
You can't allow the game.
Everything that they're bringing forward in Reaper of Souls. I mean, the only problem that I have with the game at this point is the auction house, the removal of the auction house, because I did like trading, but. That's happening whether I like it or not, so I can accept that. It's not really detracting anything from just the sheer awesomeness. That's everything that we've seen.
Your final thoughts,
I can't wait for build guides to start coming out with legendaries being listed for reasons other than their pure stats and their
gold value.
And I can't wait. Yeah, I mean, adventure mode is awesome. I've wanted it for a really long time, and I'm glad it's coming. I really hope the same thing doesn't happen with Reaper of Souls that happened with the original game, which, that kept on postponing the release. They've proven what they have now is great. I don't think, obviously it's going to be a while, but I hope it's not like 8 months or 12 months. Like, I hope it's not like a year before they release the game.
There was one interview that I saw where Alex Mayberry was talking about that, because he's more or less, kind of almost directly asked that exact question. They said a lot of the things that caused the delays with the classic Diablo was because they were trying to figure out what the essence of Diablo was in order to put into the game. And with all the feedback that they have now after releasing the game, they realize some of those mistakes that they made, and they know what it is that the community wants. So it really is just, getting the art assets, finalizing some of the itemization things, and then getting it into players' hands. But it definitely is not going to have anywhere near the same production cycle that Classic did.
That's good. That's really good.
If you recall the Diablo III beta, there were massive changes. They changed all the attributes completely, and they had the whole thing with the whole skill system redesign and the interface, and the elective mode thing that came in. They were doing major wholesale changes, months before the game was coming out. So, and as we know with Blizzard, they never are late with products with second thoughts or iterations or anything. So we should be good. 2014. So, final question: if the game was coming out tomorrow or whenever, say it's July and the game is coming out tomorrow, what are you gonna do first? Are you gonna start a new Crusader? Are you gonna leap into story mode with a current character? Are you gonna go play Act 5?
Well,
What are
it
you gonna do
depends
first,
on the
Wolfpaq?
ladder situation. But actually, I think no matter what, I'm starting a Crusader. So I'm going to say that.
Don't get your hopes up for ladder at launch. They asked Josh about ladders, and his response was, "Well, they have rungs." Yeah, that's
Yeah, we haven't
so
worked on
I
them yet.
wouldn't really expect it. I
So, what are
am
you doing
going
first, Neinball?
to create a new Crusader and play up through the story from there. So I'll roll a new Crusader, play through Classic to get, kind of see what their story is, and to kind of give a refresher of all the little nuances, through the game story itself, and then play through Act 5, and then go from adventure mode from there.
Yeah, it seems like not. I mean, given the way the game was at this demo, I can't see anyone playing campaign
Yeah.
mode longer than they have to, pretty much. Curiosity wants to get through Act 5, I guess, but then it's like, hey, I can get twice the experience and 10 times the legendaries,
Yeah,
or 20
and I
times
mean,
if you're
if I
Wolfpack.
guess if StarCraft 2 is any example, there's tons of people out there that will just skip the story because they just want to play the core gameplay. Like in StarCraft, that's multiplayer, and just the feeling that you get from the developers is adventure mode. That is going to be the core of Diablo 3, so that's the core game. So I could easily see people, going and starting their level Paragon 100 characters and just jumping straight into adventure mode and continuing from there.
Well, there won't be Paragon 100 anymore because it'll be Paragon points, which we got
Yeah.
zero new information about at the show. We're
Nope,
done?
that's it.
We're done. You've been listening to the Diablo podcast. We are online at diablo8gamers.com, and we'll be back with another podcast next week about talking to people who didn't go to Blizzcon and what they thought of it from the remote vantage point. And Ellie might even
Oh
be on that one,
no,
if you can imagine.
that is impossible. I didn't
Oh
think that
no.
was.
Oh, I have one last final thing I meant to say about funny encounters in the developer in the press room by the food dish. The what's her face, Kat Deely, the blonde woman who does all the
Hmm.
that does the TV show. She was in there one time. I was like getting my 17th Pepsi or whatever, and out of the corner of my eye I saw like a blonde woman standing there and turned over and looked at her, and I thought it was someone in cosplay for a second because she had so much makeup on and like so much dark stuff around her face and like this really bright cheek like rouge on her cheeks and eyeshadow and stuff. I thought at a glance it was like a kabuki model, like a panda craft costume or something. And I turned to look and said, "Oh, that's that woman." And she looked like she weighed about 90 pounds, super super skinny, and really big blonde hair and just super super bright visible makeup. And obviously she was on like a 5 minute lunch break or whatever from their nonstop coverage. And just seeing her in the press room under fluorescent lighting in the real world, she looked like an alien. I mean, like she was from outer space. Like you would never see a woman like that who wasn't. You never see someone look like that in real life. Like, that's what you wear like a New Year's Eve party kind of thing. And she doesn't look that weird on the television, right? I mean, you can obviously tell she's got makeup on and stuff, but it's just weird. You get a sense of how much you need to stylize yourself to look okay on TV under those really weird lighting. They have
Yeah.
like a black background, right? And they're kind of on this little stage with like big bright spotlights on them, like they're in a museum somewhere. And just seeing what she looked like in person from 3 feet away in normal lighting was very strange. So keep that in mind when you bump into famous celebrities in Hollywood. They don't look like what they do on in the movie screen or whatever. And
Oh,
then we had
all
sex.
right.
So that was great.
How d-
Yeah, right on the mashed potatoes. So exciting at BlizzCon, and you can meet famous celebrities and not famous not celebrities. Or
That's
you can
right.
be Wolfpack and just play video games. Or you can be me and have Hearthstone and no
That's all
friends.
right.
But there's an AI for
Yay.
that, so it's okay. Okay, okay. We this is the Davo podcast, and
Boo.
moo
Bye.
moo. Okay,
Bye,
bye bye.
everybody.